Okay. So we have inside the loop, we have set up one of the things I prefer to do, and I think I have a few too many comments here. So I'm going to take it out. Okay. Just these small adjustments makes it, at least for me, a little easier to read. The other, I tend to open the parentheses, or the curly braces, right at the point where I close it, so I line it. The other style format which you might see in companies or with developers is they put the opening curly braces right next to the method name of the loop and so on. You can follow whichever format you want, but you have to do it consistently. And if you are working on a group project, then the group has to come to an agreement on what styling you want to use. Okay. And the naming of variables, you can see that I start with lowercase, go with uppercase. This I use very, very rarely, but in this case it probably makes sense. The other option would have been to say something like fifth Fibonacci term or something like that. The suffix ending in 1, 2, 3 tends to be problematic in many other cases, but here I think it has some meaning to say Fibonacci 1, 2. And as far as the method names are concerned, I always start it with an uppercase letter, and then this is, does anyone know what you call this, where you uppercase some of this? Yeah, it's called camel casing. Why is it called camel casing? Yeah, it's a hump, and I guess, I don't know, is there a zoologist or somebody interested in animals? But there are, I think, one-humped camels, and then there are two-humped camels, which are called something else, dromedars or something, so it's called dromedaring, or dromedar casing rather than camel casing. But anyways, I guess let's come back to this. So is this all that we need for the logic here? Okay, Megan, what's missing?
You need your Fibonacci number 2 equals Fibonacci result.
Okay, so we have a result here. So what Megan said is each one of these 3 variables, we are doing something to it inside the loop. The only one that doesn't get reset, which, so if we leave as this, what will this Fibonacci number 2, what will its value be? It's always going to be 1. So the objective here is to constantly keep changing the value. So we start off with the first number being 0, the second number being 1, and the result is the sum of the previous 2 numbers. So the result, we said, is basically the sum of 1 and 2. And then we are saying, okay, so once we have addressed the first 2 terms, then we are going to set Fibonacci 1 to the number that is the next number, so which is Fibonacci 2. but what is Fibonacci 2? What is the next number? It's going to be result. Okay, so who is so either age or too much stress? I don't know what the combination. My memory has totally deteriorated. I used to remember much better, but my preoccupations are different, I guess. But anyways, so I keep forgetting Taylor's name. So Taylor, do you understand it?
Yeah,
Okay. So if you don't understand it, you have to tell me that you don't understand and what exactly do you not understand. So part of the learning process is not just so you have to understand why something works, why something doesn't work. And that's maybe even more important than just getting a final result.
one thing I don't understand is the index plus.
Well, this is why you should have taken the 352 course. What does it do? Somebody else? Does everyone else understand it? Okay. Let me go with Kosh.
Adding, add to one.
So what would be the equivalent if you are setting it up as an assignment? So index equals what?
Index plus.
Okay, index plus 1. So it's the equivalent of that. And there is some, like in certain cases, if you use it here, it won't. It's literally doing just that. So you test it. So it's going to start off with 1. You're going to do the test, and if the test is met, you do the whatever's inside the body, and then this gets incremented by 1. Okay. So it's usually at the end of the loop, so that this gets incremented. So if you were to try to display the value of the index inside the loop, what's it going to be? So if I checked, and you will do it if you have a list of values or an array of values. So if I said, I'll just say print as a common print index. So the first time through the loop, what will the print index do? What's the value? Yeah. It will be 1 because this gets increased at the end. Okay. So those are some things to keep in mind. So does this work? Did anyone do the paper trace that I had asked you to do?
Yeah.
You did. And does this work?
It does.
It does?
I remember that it works.
Okay. So let's say the term given to you was, if the term given to you, let's see, was, what shall we start with? Well, if it is, let's take something like 3 to start. So if the input term is 3, what happens?
Then it will go through the for loop, and it'll start by adding 0 and 1 together, and then after that, Fibonacci 1 would get 1 from Fibonacci 2, and then
so let's see, input term equals 3. Okay, so Fibonacci n1 will have 0. Fibonacci n2 is 1. So can you show me the sheet that you have? So you're saying start with 5 and then you loop through. Okay, so you have done this. Okay, let's go. How many others did what? I forgot their name. Chris did. Did anyone else who did this? Okay. Okay, so do you agree with Chris that this logic works?
No.
Okay, why not?
Because I think the first two numbers need to be declared or initialized as 0 and 1 because we can't relate them to 0.
Okay,
We need two numbers to start with.
okay, so let's start with something even simpler. If the input term, well, we cannot have it as 0. It has to be at least the first term. If the input term is 1, what would our result be? So the input term is 1. So we take Fibonacci 1 is 0, Fibonacci 2 is 1, and then what happens? We come to this loop. Will we get into this loop? Actually, based on this condition here, we said our input term is 1. So what's the index? 1. Is the index, this condition satisfied? So it is satisfied, less than or equal to, it's true. Yeah. Well, but just if you look at the logic, it's going to check and say it is true. Yeah.
So would it work if we did index equals 0?
If we did index 0, okay, Chris's question, if we made it 0, then does that help or does that hurt us even more? Yeah.
Oh, if we changed it.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't really matter because your Fibonacci numbers are declared above. So no matter what your index starts at, the first number is always going to be 1, the first number is going to be 0.
Okay. The issue is if we come into the loop, the result is going to add up these two, right? So once you come in, it's immediately going to, the first term is going to be incorrect because we want to start at 0. The first term is 0, right? The second term is 1. So, but once you go into the loop, it's going to say, I'm going to add up the first and the second numbers, which is 0 plus 1, and assign it to result. So the result will come out as 1, right? So the issue is we have initialized Fibonacci result to 0. So to prevent it from getting into the loop, you have to do something. So now we are doing all this sort of manually. What we could do is, and this is how the Scrum or the Agile processes work, is you set up a test for this. So, and I think Ashley and Eric were talking end of last class. So how do we test it? Do we develop some user interface to connect to it? And the answer is no. Okay. So, but the first thing I want to do before I go any place, I want to see that all of you have this code here on your Visual Studio. Are you using a microphone?
Yeah, it's in that. But I'm using parallel. Usually, so my computer up.
One more system. okay. Well, but when you're working there, how did you expect to move? Well, if you don't have, I can't be doing this. You have to bring a thumb drive here. So you're saying you had it there? Started over there, right? The issue is, okay, meet me after class. I cannot be doing this. If you're not interested, please drop the course. Okay, I cannot. I'm expecting you to be at this point. Actually, you can leave right now. If you don't show me the work that you're expected to do, I don't want you to come to class. Understand that? Okay, you can leave. There's no point in you being here. And I'll apply this to all of you. If you don't put in the effort before you come, there's no meaning to being here. Okay. So your Bolaji, you'll have to meet me. Okay. I'm not going to. This detracts from all of our learning processes. So right now you can leave and come and meet me after class. Okay. So now how do we test this? What we'll do is, inside of our test project, we are going to have a series of classes. Do you see where it says unit test 1? Did we create this project? How did this project come about, Eric?
You mean the unit test part?
Yeah, the unit test part.
It was just a little checkbox, so we created the MVC app.
When we created the MVC app, you had to check the box, and when you checked it, it automatically gave you this .test extension. Okay, so how many projects do you have here? There are 2 projects, right? Ashley, what are the 2 projects? The MVC application, which is a web application. The second one is a test project. Okay, so we are using this test project. Inside the test project, you're going to have, just like you have inside of your MVC app, you're going to have a series of classes and methods. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is, I said this is very bad naming convention, unit test 1. It doesn't mean anything. So instead we are testing whatever happens inside the calculator class. So we are going to change this file name to, so I'll right click on that unit test 1 and rename it to, it's going to be the tests pertaining to the calculator class. Okay, and what is it asking or prompting? Yeah.
It's just asking if you wanted to go ahead and change like the name of the class there.
Yeah. So it basically tries to correlate or coordinate the names of the file with the class name. So we have calculator test as the file name as well as the class name. And our test method is going to be for this Fibonacci. So I'll just copy the find Fibonacci number as the name of my, so I'll just put that in. And instead of having it as test method 1, I'm going to call it find Fibonacci number test. Okay. Okay. Now, the way I test it is there are 2 different ways I can call this method, but currently this find Fibonacci number, what type of method is it? Is it a method? If I want to call this method from 352, what did you have to do to call this method? Good. What Ashley just said, we have to create an object of the class to be able to call this method. Now, there are some methods that you can assign, instead of giving to objects of the class, you can give it to the class itself. You can say, so right now, this method is an object method. So the method belongs to, I'd say belongs to the object, to an object of the class. So if you want to call this, and we'll see how we'll call this later on, we'll change it. So instead of something being an object method, just like what we had here, we had instance or object variables, and what's the other type? Static or class. So your method could also belong to, so you could have a class or static method. Okay, so, and there are some advantages, especially if it is a method like find Fibonacci number. But I'll come to that later. So first, we'll use it as an instance method, and as Ashley said, and this is exactly what I want you to think and do, like what Ashley is doing. If you understand it, apply it. So apply it. How do you create an instance? Try it out. What do you do? Okay, coming with high expectations here. Did you do something good? Well, what did you not do then? No? There's one small piece that needs to do. Okay, you got it. Okay. See, these are the things, and that's why I would say you should do G52 before you do, because then if you just write the code without understanding what it means, then it's not going to add value. Okay, so then we can step out now, because I'm not good. What is the benefit of sitting here? What you need to do, you have to, it has to be quite obvious what are we trying to do. We are trying to call that method, right? So, well, that's what Ashley told us we needed to do, so we are looking at that, yeah. Yeah. So I saw Eric doing it. So Eric created the object, and what's the next step?
You have to tell the test class to use the model from the calculator.
Okay, so the first thing, and this you should have done, it's something that I expect you to know from, so calculator class is what you want to call, and when you see that it's not getting called, if it's not recognizing it, we spoke about namespaces, right? So, and one neat thing about Visual Studio is it immediately tells you that there's a solution to this problem. Okay, so you can, the light bulb or whatever you want to, and it's saying, well, use this reference. Okay, so So where is this class located? It's located in first MVC app last name and within the models directory, right? So that's why it says using first MVC app last name dot models. So so it basically brings it up here, right? So now calculator will be recognized. So I'm saying I'm going to create an object of this calculator class. And each time I'm creating an object, I have to use, what do I need to use to create an object? What's this called? No, it's calculator in this particular instance, but there's a generic name for this. What am I doing? I'm creating or constructing. So I'm constructing an object. So when I construct an object, I'm using a constructor. Okay, so this is a constructor method. And how many constructor methods do I have? You could have multiple of them. In this case, there is only one way of constructing an object, which is, and if I had multiple of them, it will show up as multiple options. Okay, so in this case, there's only one. And then once I construct this object, what do I do? Yeah. Okay, I call the method. So I use the object, and how do I call the method? Okay, dot find Fibonacci number, right? And you can see that the IntelliSense tells you what? What's the signature of this? It needs an integer input, and also what's it telling you? You haven't provided one, but the signature tells you something other than that you need an integer output. It also tells you something else. Okay, you need a value. What else is it telling you? It's going to do its work, and do you see something at the very? It's going to return an integer. So the other thing I want you to do is to read the IntelliSense, right? You have to learn to read the messages it's giving you. Ultimately, if you're using a development environment like Visual Studio, it's useful only if you can understand the messages it's giving you. Otherwise, you might as well use Notepad or something like that. So anyway, so we want an input term. So I'm going to set up an integer, which I'll just call as input term, and I'll start with what were we wanting? Something very simple, input term 1. Okay, and the way this tests work, so I'll give. So how do I use this input term now? It's a parameter value that I need to pass in. So I pass it to the method, and the method will do its job and bring back. What's it going to do? It's going to provide me an integer value, the result. So the result is, in this case, another integer, and this is going to be, we said find Fibonacci number, so it's the Fibonacci number, and so this is, when I'm testing, there are going to be two values. One is going to be the expected value, and I'm going to test it against the actual value. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to have two forms of the Fibonacci number, So one of them I'm going to call the actual Fibonacci number or the resulting Fibonacci number, and then the other going to call the expected Fibonacci number. So if I give an input term of 1, what am I expecting to be the result? If I give an input of 1, the first term is 0, so the expected Fibonacci number is 0. Okay. So where do I put the actual Fibonacci? Where do I get this from? What it calculates. So so once it's calculated, where do I get that value? So what do I do with this?
It's that calculated dot times the Fibonacci number in the term, the actual Fibonacci.
So on this side?
On
The other side, okay. So this value, I need to assign it here. Okay, good. So the actual, and the IntelliSense should pick it up as soon as I use A. It should. It's better not to type out the entire variable or whatever else, because if you change the case, it's an entirely different variable you're referring to. Okay. Now, so we have the expected and the actual. So the way the testing works is using a set of assertions. So I'm going to assert dot R equal. So where is this assert coming from? So assert is a class name, R equal is a method name. So we didn't create it. Where do you think this came from? Yeah. Yeah, the .NET framework that we discussed earlier. So this is given to us by Microsoft's developers. They already built it in. Okay. And some of this is actually going open source, so there are some parts of MVC that have been, which is surprising for Microsoft. But so I shouldn't say it was created by Microsoft's developers. It could have been anyone potentially. Okay, so I'm going to check the. If you look at this IntelliSense, what's it telling you? R equal, and then what does it tell you here? You see 1 of 18. Yeah, what does it mean?
Saying that you use the expected and actual Fibonacci numbers as
Okay. Yeah, you need expected and actual as parameters of this method are equal. It's also telling you that there are 18 versions of this method. Yeah.
Can you put any object?
Yes, you can put any object. So you can basically take objects that we'll be creating multiple classes. So, but here we are going to go with something much simpler. These are integers. So expected Fibonacci number, actual Fibonacci number, and then you could also give a message as to if it fails, where did it fail? So it should be within strings, so double quotes. You can say input term was 0 and expected was, what were we expecting? Input term was 1, I'm sorry, and expected was 0. No. If and else here, that would be, you mean at this point, with assertions? With assertions, you never want to do the entire thing is the assertion takes care of checking to see if the logic is working or not. Okay. So let's try this out. So I'm going to build this entire solution. to just make sure that there are no syntax errors. Okay, and once it has run, what you can do is either go into where it says Test Explorer, or if you don't see that option, go to Test, Windows, and Test Explorer. And how many of you see this test here? Okay. You should see the test, yeah, Krista?
My expected Fibonacci number in the last line is saying that it's an undefined local variable, but it's not.
Which one over here?
Yeah.
Have you assigned the value here? Okay, so once you set it up, run it, and this will come back as red or green, and here it comes back as red, and what's it saying? The test failed, and if you highlight it, click on it, it'll say the expected value is 0, actual is 1, and then whatever the message we set up in the string, input term was 1, expected was 0. So instead, it came back as 1 as the actual. So why is this happening? And this is where, how many of you have used breakpoints in debugging? Okay, only 2 of you. In 352, you didn't use this? Okay, it's very, very simple to do, and it's I want to see every one of you use it, because it's a very useful tool for doing any software development. Every environment has this option, so wherever you want to stop it, so let's say I want to stop it initially here. So I go to this gray column and click on it, and it should put a red dot there. Okay, yeah. How do I, well, I just went in here, and you don't, what's that? No, not yet. I first put the breakpoints. So I go to this line, click on this gray area, and it should put that red dot there. And then I'll go into my calculator method, and I'll put another red dot at the start of the for loop. Okay. So once I have this, I can go in. Then I have 2 breakpoints now. And then I right-click on this test that just failed. And what do I say? Debug the selected test. Okay, so I'll debug it. And since what's the first place it's going to stop? Inside this where at the point I'm calling the method, right? What's it telling you? It's telling you that the input term is 1. If I continue on, where do you think it's going to go? Is it going to go to the assert? We are calling this method, right? So if I click on this continue, it's going to go into this other clause, and this is actually a very good way of tracing the connections. Okay, so now the input term is 1, but we have to, if you want to go into the loop and see what's happening there, you can see that it comes in here, goes into the loop. If you continue on, Fibonacci result is 1, and it comes back, and this is going to fail. Now, what I want you to do for next class is have these breakpoints and use this to figure out where exactly the problem in the logic is. And also, the other thing I want you to do is, we are starting with something very simple. I want you to use different input terms. So I'll change it to, let's say, 6. If the input term is 6, what is the expected? expected is something else. I don't know what that number is. You can put that number down. And then do the test. Right? So if it just works for input term of 1 alone, it's not sufficient. Right? So you want to do it for at least 2 or 3 other values. Yes.
Can you show us where I got it again? Because I don't know what
Okay, just
I know how to select it, but I don't know where to put it or why.
well, it's the usual for the first starting point is usually where you are first going to call the method. In this case over here. So this is where the point Fibonacci is getting called. So I want to at least see, am I reaching that point? And once I reach it, then I will say, okay, let's see what's happening inside the loop. So I put one at the start of the loop, put one inside the loop, and then put a breakpoint just before the value gets returned. And then I go to the test itself, right-click on it, and debug it. Okay, so try this out, and when you come next class, try it out with different input values, with different expected values, and then try to figure out where the problem the logic is. So you don't need a UI to do this. This is a much more efficient way to test. Okay, I'll see you on Tuesday. So go through this, make sure you understand. My expectation is you come with putting in the work. If not, there's no point in coming to class.